Hello everyone from AI Seeking the Truth. I've got another crazy encounter that was sent in to us and I'm emptying the folders on. I've got quite a few of them. So if you have not subscribed to this channel, subscribe, ring that bell, select all. We got a lot of good stuff coming. If you like to get scared, this is going to be the place to do it. If you like the things that's off the rails or outside of the box, this is where I'm going to be putting it. And we got some crazy stuff over here, trust me. Ask Scott B. There's a story about an old woman driving a car and a kid in the driveway, guys. It doesn't end good. It really upset Scott. Bothered him a long time. So there's some other ones in there, and I'm telling you, they are off the rails. So if you like this kind of encounters people send in, this is going to be the place you're going to find it. Let's get into this one. My mom lived in North Carolina from the time I was 11 to 2020, when she passed away from heart failure. Though I hadn't seen her since I was 10, she never really believed in monsters, ghosts, and or subjects like that, dismissing them all as fiction and imagination. But after an unexpected encounter she had in 2017 near Camp, I believe it's Lejeune, North Carolina, something tells me she likely changed her mind. If anyone lived in the southern or southeastern United States, they likely have heard of the Lizard Man. Apparently this, whatever it is, had been tromping around that region for over a century. In fact, lots of people claim to have seen it, or at least seen evidence of it in 2014. 2014 seemed to be a banner year, as people saw scratch marks, apparent teeth marks, and other property damage by what looked like something big and angry. My mom wasn't unscathed. Half of her fence that separated her mother's house, where she lived, from the apartment complex just off a torn had been ripped apart and thrown about. My mom thought it was just vandals, although my grandmother told her that her house was one of only 3 on the entire block, and they kept to themselves. Plus, no human vandal would do that to a steel fence. My mom figured it was just someone playing a joke, but soon learned it was no joke. A week later, my mom was coming from work at around 11 p.m. Even though it was pitch black outside, there was a full moon, so she could still see pretty clearly. As she approached a T intersection, she saw something lying on the road and thought someone was in trouble. She slowed down and lowered her window and asked if they needed help. The figure jumped as if it startled and stood up. My mom estimated it to be 8 feet tall. At least it glared at her with piercing red eyes and opened its mouth to reveal jagged teeth, shining white, in her car's high beams. She flashed her beams a few times to confuse it, then tore out of there in the other direction. She looked in her rearview mirror and saw the lizard chasing after her. She sped up, but it was still on her tail. She turned into the diner's parking lot and ran inside the diner to hide. When a patron saw her white face, he asked her what had happened, and she breathlessly told him what had happened to her. He nodded and picked up a rifle he had with him in the back. He then walked outside and looked around. After a few minutes, he went back in and said whatever it was, or whoever it was, had now vanished. The next night, my mother was taking a walk when she heard a hissing sound right behind her. She heard that thing and seen that thing facing her, a monster behind you. Don't ever turn to look. She just walked calmly down the road, and the hissing grew fainter as she tried to ignore it as not to startle it or get it to chase her. Even so, she was still terrified because that meant the monster had remembered her, and it now knew who she was and where she was. When she got back home, she was shocked to see that 3 of her SUV's windows were smashed, a mirror had been almost ripped off, and there were deep gouges on the front of the hood. There were also webbed footprints surrounding the house and the cars. She walked inside, saw her grandmother talking to 2 police officers. Turns out many people had also seen the Lizard Man and wanted to make sure it wasn't a severe case of mass hysteria. But the description of my mother and grandmother were almost identical to what other people had described. My mother never saw him again before she died, but reports still trickle in from places like Miami, Baton Rouge, Raleigh, Savannah, and even Waco. Is the Lizard Man real? Was it just pranks by locals? I honestly can't say for sure because I wasn't there or anything, and I've never seen one myself. Maybe there is a giant reptilian creature skulking in these sparsely heavily populated areas in the subtropical U.S. If so, I hope everyone is okay and that everyone is safe. But I have a feeling my mom was telling the truth. She didn't believe in those things, and for her to even have mentioned it meant that she had to see something that didn't belong. And that alone is very scary to me. You know, it reminds me of whenever I was fishing with my mom and I saw that green face in the fork of that tree with the yellow eyes and the black dots on it. That would have been reptilian looking. That would have been the best way I would have known to describe it, because at first I thought it was a large frog. So, yeah, I believe 100% these things exist, and I believe they're out there, and I think whatever it was might have been stalking your mom for a while. I really do. Guys, thank you for listening to this channel. If you haven't subscribed again, I'd like to ask you to subscribe. And until next time, guys, be careful, because you never know what's out there stalking you.